Today, June 14, 2025, is a day freighted with the weight of American history, a day that now presents two starkly different visions of our nation. On one hand, it is a day of official celebration. It is Flag Day, the anniversary of the day in 1777, when the Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes. It is also the 250th birthday of the United States Army, an institution born from the very same revolution that created our flag. These anniversaries are meant to unite us in shared pride for our country's founding ideals and the service members who have defended them across generations. We are called to remember a legacy of liberty and sacrifice, a story of a people forging a republic. Yet, on the other hand, this same date is unfolding as a day of profound national crisis and dissent. Across the country, from small towns to sprawling cities, a different kind of gathering is taking place. Thousands of Americans are participating in protests under the banner of No Kings, a direct challenge to what they see as a rising tide of authoritarianism. This movement was not born in a vacuum. It is the culmination of growing anxieties over the past several years. It reflects a deep-seated fear that the fundamental principles of American democracy, the very ones we are meant to celebrate today, are in jeopardy, threatened not by a foreign power, but from within. The contrast could not be more dramatic. In Washington, D.C., the rumble of tanks on pavement serves as the soundtrack for an official, state-sanctioned display of military might. Meanwhile, in cities like Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and Portland, the sound is of marching feet and chanting voices, a popular expression of resistance. The day has become a crucible, a moment of intense pressure that reveals the deep fractures in our society. It forces us to ask uncomfortable questions about who we are and what we stand for. Are we a nation defined by the strength of our military, or by the strength of our democratic ideals and the right of our people to voice their dissent? This division isn't just political theater, it has tangible, real-world consequences that are touching communities everywhere. The deployment of federal troops on American soil against the will of local governments, the heated legal battles over constitutional limits on presidential power, and the preemptive mobilization of National Guards by some governors have created an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear. The air is thick with talk of insurrection, martial law, and the Posse Comitatus Act, terms that once felt like relics of history textbooks, but are now part of our daily conversation. This day, June 14, 2025, has become a national stress test, pushing our institutions, our communities, and our very identity to the brink. The current national crisis did not erupt overnight. Its immediate trigger can be traced back to recent events in Los Angeles, California. There, citizen protests began as a response to a series of aggressive raids conducted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement in so-called sanctuary areas. These demonstrations were initially local, driven by community members concerned about the separation of families and the heavy-handed tactics being used in their neighborhoods. They were exercising their constitutional right to assembly, making their voices heard on a matter of public policy that directly impacted their lives and the character of their city. It was a scene familiar to American history citizens pushing back against government actions they deemed unjust. The situation escalated dramatically when the federal government chose to frame these protests not as dissent, but as rebellion. President Trump and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem publicly labeled the events in Los Angeles an insurrection, a term with serious legal and historical implications. This rhetorical shift was a critical turning point. It transformed a local dispute over immigration policy into a national security issue in the eyes of the administration. This reframing provided the justification for an unprecedented step: the deployment of active-duty military forces for a domestic law enforcement purpose, a move that many legal scholars argue runs contrary to long-standing American tradition and law. Without the consent of California's state government, the president federalized 4,000 members of the California National Guard and, even more alarmingly, deployed 700 U.S. Marines to the city. Soon, images of armed Marines in combat gear guarding federal buildings in a major American city began to circulate, sending shockwaves across the nation. This action immediately prompted fierce legal challenges, citing the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which generally forbids the use of the military as a domestic police force. The fight moved from the streets to the courts, with the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals now weighing an emergency request to halt the deployment, a decision that could have profound consequences for the balance of power between the states and the federal government. the deployment in Los Angeles became the spark that lit a national fire. For many Americans, watching U.S. Marines on the streets of a domestic city was a line crossed. It crystallized fears that had been simmering for years about the militarization of government and the erosion of democratic norms. The administration's move was seen by critics not as a necessary measure to restore order, but as a deliberate choice to use the armed forces to intimidate and silence political opposition. This single act in Southern California is what galvanized the disparate threads of discontent into the nationwide No Kings movement we are witnessing today, turning a local protest into a national crucible. While protests ripple across the nation, the heart of the federal government in Washington, D.C. is the stage for a very different kind of event. Today, a massive military parade is set to roll down Constitution Avenue, an event timed to coincide with the Army's 250th birthday, Flag Day, and President Trump's own birthday. The scale of the parade is staggering. It is not merely a procession of soldiers in dress uniform, but a full-throated display of heavy military hardware. The plans include 26 M1 Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, Stryker combat vehicles, and mobile howitzer artillery pieces. Machines of war positioned on steel plates to protect the historic city streets. The sky above is also part of the spectacle, with flyovers by Apache, Black Hawk, and Chinook helicopters. The stated purpose of this $45 million event is to honor the men and women of the U.S. military and celebrate the Army's long and storied history. Supporters view it as a patriotic display, a powerful reminder of America's strength, and a well-deserved tribute to its service members. They argue that showcasing this might serve as a deterrent to foreign adversaries and a source of pride for citizens. In this view, the parade is a celebration of the very institution that has guaranteed the nation's freedom for 2.5 centuries. It is meant to be a unifying spectacle, bringing Americans together to marvel at the capabilities of their armed forces and the dedication of those who serve. However, the context of this parade has imbued it with a much more complex and divisive meaning. Coming at a time of intense domestic political division, and against the backdrop of military deployments in American cities, the event is seen by many not as a celebration, but as an unnerving show of force directed at a domestic audience. Critics point to the timing and the immense cost as evidence that the parade is less about honoring the troops and more about political messaging. They argue that it projects an image of authoritarianism, where the loyalty of the military is displayed as a personal political asset rather than a tool of the state, meant to defend the Constitution. This spectacle in the Capitol has therefore become a powerful symbol in the day's unfolding drama. The sight of tanks in Washington while protesters march against what they call king-like behavior creates a jarring juxtaposition. For many, it seems to confirm the very fears that are driving the No Kings movement, the idea of a government that increasingly relies on the symbols and substance of military power to assert its authority. Reagan National Airport has been shut down for the event, a logistical necessity that also serves as a metaphor for how this official celebration has disrupted the normal functions of the nation's capital, prioritizing a display of power over the daily lives of its people. In direct response to the events in Los Angeles and the broader political climate, a decentralized grassroots movement has swept across the country, operating under the name 50501, signifying 50 states and 50 protests. It has a simple but powerful motto: no thrones, no crowns, no kings. This slogan really captures the core anxiety of its participants, a belief that the office of the president is being treated like a monarchy, and that the fundamental American principle of a government of, by, and for the people is under assault. The movement is intentionally non-hierarchical, organized through a loose network of local activists and community groups, which has allowed it to spread rapidly and adapt to local conditions across all 50 states. The movement has planned approximately 2,000 separate events for today, and the vast majority of these are designed to be non-violent marches, rallies, and vigils. The flagship rally is taking place in Philadelphia, the birthplace of American democracy, at Independence Mall. The choice of location is deeply symbolic, a deliberate effort to draw a direct line from the ideals of the nation's founders to the modern-day struggle to preserve them. By gathering where the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were signed, protesters are framing their actions not as a rebellion against America, but as an effort to reclaim its founding principles from those they believe are betraying them. The protests have manifested differently from state to state, reflecting the nation's diverse political landscape. In cities like New York, marches have been large but orderly, contained by a significant police presence. In Texas, marches in Austin and San Antonio proceeded under the watchful eye of the Texas National Guard, which was mobilized by the governor. There, some friction points led to arrests, highlighting the tension between state authorities and protesters. The most volatile situation has developed in Portland, Oregon, a city with a long history of protest. Near a federal ICE facility, tensions escalated quickly, with protesters throwing projectiles and police declaring an unlawful assembly before deploying tear gas and impact munitions, resulting in injuries and arrests. This movement represents a significant outpouring of public sentiment, a raw and widespread expression of concern for the future of the country. The No King slogan has resonated because it taps into a primal American fear of unchecked executive power, a fear that dates back to the revolution against King George III. While the administration and its supporters label the protests as the work of anarchists or as an insurrection, the participants see themselves as patriots. They are ordinary citizens, teachers, veterans, students, and retirees, who have chosen to spend this historic day not watching a parade, but actively participating in what they consider to be the messy, necessary work of democracy. In a climate of such high tension and uncertainty, personal safety becomes a paramount concern for everyone, whether you are participating in a protest or simply trying to go about your day. For those who feel compelled to join the demonstrations, it is crucial to prioritize safety above all else. The organizers of the No Kings movement have stressed nonviolence, and adhering to this principle is the most important step. It is wise to go with a group of trusted friends or family and to establish a clear plan beforehand. Know your entry and exit routes and designate a meeting spot in case you get separated. Having a plan provides a sense of control and a clear course of action if the situation deteriorates. When preparing for a protest, what you carry is almost as important as your mindset. Essentials include a comfortable pair of shoes, a bottle of water to stay hydrated, and some cash in case electronic payment systems are down or unavailable. It is also smart to have your identification with you. Perhaps most critically, carry a fully charged cell phone or a backup power bank to ensure you can stay in communication with your group and loved ones. It is equally important to know your rights. If you are stopped or detained by law enforcement, the advice from civil liberties groups is clear. Stay calm, state that you are remaining silent, and ask for a lawyer. Do not argue or resist, as this can escalate the situation. For the many Americans who are not protesting, safety still requires awareness and preparation. The most important step is to stay informed through reliable local news sources. Know where protests are planned in your area and avoid those locations if possible. Traffic will likely be disrupted and tensions can spill over into surrounding neighborhoods. This is a good day to stay closer to home if you can. It's also a time to be vigilant against misinformation. A flood of false rumors and inflammatory content is circulating on social media. Before sharing any information, take a moment to verify it with a credible source. Spreading panic and falsehoods only makes a tense situation worse. At home, a few simple preparations can provide peace of mind. Ensure your car has at least a half tank of gas. Check that you have a few days' worth of essential supplies such as non-perishable food, water, and any necessary medications. This is not about panic buying but about basic readiness, the same kind you would undertake for a severe weather event. Having these things on hand means you can stay put and avoid unnecessary trips out into a potentially volatile environment. In these difficult moments, a little bit of practical planning allows you to maintain a sense of stability and security for yourself and your family, giving you the space to process events without added stress. Beyond the immediate concerns of physical safety, today's events call on us to cultivate a deeper form of resilience. This is a psychological and community-based strength that allows us to navigate times of national crisis with integrity and grace. It begins with managing our own response to the flood of information and emotion. It is easy to become overwhelmed by the constant stream of alarming headlines, social media posts, and heated commentary. It is important to stay informed, but it is equally important to know when to step away. Limiting your exposure to panic-inducing media and giving yourself time to disconnect can help maintain your mental and emotional balance, which is essential for clear thinking and wise decision-making. This is also a moment that calls for us to strengthen the bonds within our own communities. True national resilience is not built in Washington, it is built on our streets, in our neighborhoods, block by block. Now is the time to check in on your neighbors, especially those who may be elderly, isolated, or vulnerable. A simple phone call or a knock on the door can make a world of difference. Establishing communication plans with your family and a few close neighbors creates a small, robust network of mutual support. This sense of community is a powerful antidote to the fear and division that crises can breed. It reminds us that we are not alone, and that we can rely on each other. Maintaining a sense of normalcy and agency is also a powerful act of resilience. In times of upheaval, sticking to your routines as much as possible can provide a comforting sense of stability for you and your family. Simple acts like cooking a meal together, taking a walk, or reading a book can be grounding. Furthermore, remember that practical preparation is a form of empowerment. By taking simple steps, having a go bag with important documents, ensuring you have basic supplies, and having a family plan, you are not giving in to fear. Instead, you are asserting control over what you can control. This proactive mindset reduces anxiety and frees you to be a source of strength for others. America has faced profound challenges before. America's history is filled with moments of deep division, political turmoil, and social unrest. It has navigated civil war, economic depressions, and world wars. Each time, the nation's ability to endure and eventually heal has depended on the quiet, steady resilience of its ordinary people. Today, as we watch two Americas on display, one of military pageantry and one of popular protest, it is this spirit of community care and practical preparedness that will see us through. By staying informed but not intimidated, by caring for our neighbors, and by focusing on what we can do, we demonstrate the enduring strength of the American people. This is how we navigate the crucible together.